I feel like sometimes I've been criticized because I do like these things, and like, oh, people see it as, oh, you're taking away from your family. I'm like, no, I actually feel like I'm giving to my family, and I feel like I'm by me remaining active and doing these things and having goals of my own that aren't just living vicariously through my children. It's bettered them as well.
Welcome to the Athlete Mental Health Podcast. I'm your host, Jennifer Schmitt, off road endurance athlete and mental health mentor. If you're really serious about getting that next PB, you can't overlook taking care of your mental health. Because although mental health and sport performance might seem completely unrelated, when you look at how your body actually works, you'll find out that they're two sides of the same coin, which means prioritizing your mental health will boost your sport performance. I'll dive deep into the scientific connections between mental health and sport performance and give you practical strategies that will get you to the root of your depression and anxiety so that you can feel your best and perform even better. Hey team, and welcome back to the Athlete Mental Health Podcast. Or if this is the first time you're tuning in, welcome to the show. I am excited to have here today my coach, who is Craig Schmitt. So no, we are not related. Yes, our last names are the same. They're not spelled the same. But Craig is the owner of Grit Performance Sport Physio. He's based out of Red Deer, Alberta, and he's a physiotherapist and an endurance sport coach. And like I said, he is also my coach. And he's not just a coach, he's also an incredible athlete himself. He's a 5-time Ironman World Championship finisher and also has a 2:39 marathon time, which is crazy. He's coming hot off of Berlin Marathon this year. And I think the thing that's more incredible than all of these feats athletically is that he also has accomplished all of this while he's had 4 kids who also are incredible athletes themselves, and a wife who has her own business too. And there is a lot of stuff happening at the Schmidt household. So somehow, I don't know how he does it. He manages to get everything in and finished and take care of his athletes and his kids and his family. I don't get it, but that's what we're going to talk about today because I think that's something that a lot of endurance athletes struggle with is the time balance and balancing all the things that seem really important. And I think you might be the master of it, Craig.
I don't know about the master of it, but yeah, it's definitely challenging at times, and there's definitely things that have to implement, yeah, to make everything work. So, and I think that's where we're kind of headed this discussion a little bit.
Yeah, yeah, I'm gonna pick your brain a bit and see what we can learn from you and how we can change our training or adjust our lives to be able to fit the things in and how all of that works. So appreciate you being here.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Awesome. I mean, a little bit. I mean, I gave you a little bit of an intro, but tell us a bit more about yourself, Craig, so the audience knows kind of a bit more who you are and how you got to where you are, and maybe some story time about some races and things.
Okay, sure. Yeah, yeah. Like it's um well, like a lot of people, I guess I've been an athlete my whole life. As a kid growing up, dreaming of NHL stardom was a hope, and then you quickly realize that I actually wasn't even close, and so that dream faded a very very long time ago, and there was actually a phase in my life where sport really wasn't that relevant. I got into university, and I really actually did very little, did actually almost no physical activity for a time, and let myself go. I can't remember what the term is. What do they call it? The freshman five or the freshman 10?
Freshman 15.
Freshman 15. Sure, I
For
added
me, it
to
was 20, but
that. I was well beyond 15. We'll say that. And then I just didn't like it, and I started just kind of getting into strength training a little bit, and really got into that for a time, and I guess if you would call it bulking up, but I didn't even like it, to be truthful. I didn't like going to the gym, and then in a roundabout way, I discovered endurance sport, and my first foray into it really was on a whim biking from Vancouver to Calgary. I
oh,
joined a I joined my wife's cousin who had a tragic family event happen, and he was looking for somebody to do this bike ride with. And in a moment of not thinking about it, I said I would do it, and we did it. And I got to tell you, it was potentially the most painful thing. If for you cyclists out there, the perineal area after not cycling and then biking over 1,000 kilometers in 7 days was outrageously painful. But at the same time, like really that had a big impact on my life. And I didn't know how much I'd enjoy it until I went out and did it. And from then on, I basically um, I became a bit of an endurance junkie. And it was a whole new world to me that I explored. And I thought, my goodness, like this is where has this been my whole life? And I have never stopped. I was probably, let's see, I'm 46 now. I want to say I was maybe, I must have been about 25, 26 years old when that happened. And I haven't stopped since,
Yeah,
for any
yeah, so
reason.
you're
So
20 years in.
20 years in, and I I I think I can safely say I'm as passionate about it now as I was then. It is
Yeah.
just one of those things that I love, and it's the people you meet along the way, and the cool things you get to do, and um, it's just never left. The passion's never left. And as you had said, like I'm a physiotherapist who does treat orthopedic injuries, a lot of athletes, mostly athletes, but also I get to combine them by also coaching. So my first
Mhm,
degree was in exercise physiology in Calgary, and then I did my physiotherapy up at the University of Alberta, and now I've been able to combine the two, where
mhm.
I can do it as a career, but also deal with endurance athletes every day of my life, and it's kind of like a dream. Like I get to combine these wonderful things and make a career out of it. So I'm pretty darn fortunate to be able to do that.
Well, and I think that's one of the things that probably I think makes you a really good coach is that you are that passionate about it and that bleeds into your work always. So, just like knowing that that background, the expertise is there, like from the like experience side of things, and that you've been through all the crazy stuff that can happen in an endurance race or during training and all that, but also knowing that like the science background and all of that is there, um and the passion that comes through all of that. Like there's a ton of endurance sport coaches out there. I feel like everybody that runs or does triathlon at some point just like feels this need to like, well, maybe I can be a coach. And like it's not the same. I don't see that same level of passion with a lot of the people that I've, spoken to over the years and things like that. So it's pretty cool to see.
Thanks. Yeah, yeah, it is. It's a blessing. Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, it's endurance sport is tough because I think a lot of people burn out. I mean, the hours are kind of crazy that you need to actually put in if you're going to do that doesn't mean win, but like do as well as you possibly can within the body and things that you have. How do you keep that level of energy just like up and rolling for 20 years? And I don't see any stopping.
Hmm. Yeah, I guess um, I guess a big part of it is the joy of it. As everyone else who's done these types of things has experienced injury in one form or another,
Mhm,
and those are tough, tough times. It's tough physically and it's tough mentally. And I quickly realized, and I think my family quickly realizes, if I don't have that outlet of biking, swimming, running, hiking, uh, I it's pretty safe to say I'm not as happy of a person. And
mhm,
and um, that is where I guess a little bit of it. I like how it feels, but I also like I just like doing it. I love moving my body. One of our as a family, some of this might sound a little bit goofy, like a little bit corny, maybe, or whatever, but we actually sat down as a family several years ago and we came up with our family values. What
mhm,
are things that are most important as a family? And we came up with five things. One of the things was moving our body. We
mhm,
value moving our body every day.
mhm,
So as a family, this is a priority. And so we've instilled it in our children. I do it every day. Um, and it's always exciting. There's always something new to do. And in the endurance sport world, it is absolutely endless.
mhm,
And it can be anything from, um, I mean, it can be somebody getting ready for a 10K
mhm,
to one of my athletes just did his first 100 miler.
mhm,
And Running has literally in the last 5 years changed his life, and I think even one point he said to me it saved his life.
Mhm.
And so there's such a wide variety of, and it doesn't have to be a race.
Mhm.
Just went down with some friends and ran Grand Canyon in March of earlier this year. A day that I will never forget. And all the winter training and climbing the mountains and, mid calf to knee deep snow, which isn't always fun, but it was worth it. So we could
Mhm.
have that experience of that day. And that's where kind of the excitement comes from is there's just always something new to do.
Mhm.
And it doesn't have to be as extreme as a 100 miler, but that can be a potential for people, right? And so
Mhm.
that's where a bit of the excitement is. I'm I think we'll talk in a moment about planning, but I'm very planned, and I'm also always have something on the horizon. I
Mhm.
always know one or two things I'm going to do the following year that I can build towards, and
Mhm.
so that's where part of the excitement is. Um, One of my life mottos is we should do the things that excite us,
Mhm.
and these things get me excited, right? And
Yeah.
so the ability to kind of forge ahead and not burn out comes from the excitement and the joy of like part of the process of getting there, and I've
Mhm.
just never tired of it.
Yeah. Well,
Hmm.
and I think there's like a unique, I don't know, and maybe you can touch on this a little bit. I don't know if you have like any sort of they're probably ingrained in you now as habits, but ways that you kind of look at even just like an everyday workout. Like I know, and I probably have learned this from you, but also just like being kind of a type A person. Like when I'm, for example, on the bike trainer, which I love biking, the bike trainer is okay. It's not as fun as being outside, but like when I'm sitting on the bike trainer, I'm literally thinking about that one hill in the course that I know that I like really want to like dominate or whatever. And I'm like, picturing that hill, and it's just like it's not me, I'm not on the bike trainer anymore, I'm out there, and I'm just like so I'm motivated by these like little micro things. So I don't know if you have any like habits where you're like intentionally connecting with that joy or challenge or whatever that looks like for you, but like is there something that you're doing that helps you to actually access that joy as opposed to just like doing it as a thing that you do every day?
um One is, I guess, it's difficult. I don't know where all the listeners come from, but in of course in Canada, we deal with a lot of winter,
Mhm.
and so there's a lot of snow, a lot of cold. And but still, I don't care. I will do as much as I possibly can outside. I try to do something just about every day outside. And with a couple of our kids, cross country skiing, that's another thing I've integrated for kind of a cross train and kind of a fun thing to hang out with my kids a little bit more. And um, but getting outside, I just feel better, right? And so there
Mhm.
is always that motivation to get outside and do so. I have a right behind me here, I have a treadmill, but I don't use it outside of work purposes.
Mhm.
I do all my running outside and I feel great. So even in the dead of winter, it doesn't matter how cold it is, I can get outside and run. And that's motivating to me. Um, the other one too, where, and I don't know if it's just intrinsically built within me, is the idea of always trying to discover what am I capable of.
Mm.
And so the motivation factor doesn't really wane. Um, I know I have to get the work done to achieve whatever I have it is that I want to achieve, and for me, that's enough. I'm not saying that's enough for everybody, but I do have fairly ambitious goals. I mean, I'm just turned 46, and I still have an idea that I can run my fastest marathon,
Mhm.
and that's what motivates me right now. Is like, okay, you know what? I got a couple shots next year. I think I'm going to give myself. And for me, that is completely fine for me to wake up in the morning and be excited about,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah.
there's always that long range, and to some degree, I enjoy the grind of it all. I don't mind it.
Mhm.
Um, Not that I get up excited or super pumped up for every workout, but overall, I enjoy the grind. I feel, I guess, in a way, I feel proud of it. That
Mhm.
I'm like, I'm going to do things that other people aren't willing to do. I'm going to make it happen, and there's a little bit of self satisfaction in that for sure.
Mhm.
And And I am happy that I have the possibility of running faster in my 40s than I did in my 20s and 30s. I think I can do it. I'm not saying I've done it yet, but I think I have an outside chance at it, right? So I hope that kind of answers that question a little bit.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, just like being it sounds like that connection to what's possible is kind of just what keeps you going. And it's not always races, which I find interesting too. Is like you even talked about earlier, like going out on those big adventures, going down to the Grand Canyon, like coming out to the mountains and having a day with the crew, like that kind of stuff is motivating too. And it's I think something that almost every endurance athlete will probably I don't want to say struggle, but like come up to at some point in their life of like, why am I even racing? Like, what am I doing? Do I need to race, or is it just about showing up and getting a time or getting a PB or whatever that looks like? Or is it about the process, the adventure, like seeing what your body is capable of, like you said, like all of those little things sometimes are the real motivators rather than the actual races themselves.
Hmm. I think we even have a mutual friend, Fraser. He's been I met Fraser through I guess physiotherapy and coaching him, and now he's an interesting fella because each year or each time we meet up, I'm kind of like, so what are your goals? Like, what do you want? And he's always like, uh, I want to be able to do cool stuff, and that's it. He could care less if he races or not.
Mhm,
It's real. That's not the thing. He will enter races, but it's more of a challenge. And he's more into, I want to be able to do cool things. I'm like,
mhm.
huh, that's actually a pretty good idea. And we kind of joke because we're of similar age, and as we get older, are we letting ourselves slip away a little bit and that kind of thing, and we're fighting it. We're fighting that I guess what society tells us about our age and how about we should be getting worse in a sense.
Mhm,
And he's funny. He's like, no, I just like I want to be able to do cool things. So he went down and ran some of the Grand Canyon with us this year, and we're just hoping to continue doing these run adventures, and that's his
mhm.
motivation, and it has nothing to do with the numbers on the clock at a race.
Yeah.
And I find that motivating too. It's like, right, so he's just doing stuff that excites him, and I love it, right? so
Mhm.
so we all have our different purposes, but yeah, he's a good friend of ours, and I still bug him about like, hey, maybe you want to really go for this, and it's like, no, I just want to be really fit. Okay. So it's
Done.
different things for different people. Yeah, absolutely. So
Yeah, yeah, and he's, probably one of the best motivators too. He's, always like I go on lots of adventures with Fraser, and he's one of those people that he's always I'll suggest a run. He'll be like, "Hey, let's do this." It's like 20K or something trail run in the mountains. And then he somehow always finds a stinking loop or an extension or something and be like, "We should do this." And it's
yeah,
like 30. And I'm like, "Come on, you don't know I like my limit's 25, you know that." He's like, you'll be fine." And
yeah,
be like there's always like the negotiation. Even a couple years ago when we did like the 2 laps around Mount Rundle. So for anybody that's not familiar with the Bow Valley, there's a mountain range in between Canmore and Banff, and to go all the way around it is exactly a marathon. So it's 42.2 kilometers all the way around. So this was during COVID and I was bored. So I decided I was going to bike it first and then run it. And I didn't even know Fraser. Um, he decided to come. I think I might have met, I don't even know if I actually had met him before, but he just came with me. And I remember at the end, like I was struggling. I've never run a marathon except that. So I've never raced a marathon. And I did my first marathon in quotations, after I biked, which was kinda dumb. Anyways, I was struggling, and he was just dragging me along and being like, "We're gonna finish this in 6 hours, like, you can do this." I'm
yeah,
like, "Who is this guy?" I coulda
yeah,
smacked him on the head, but yeah, it's those people though, like, it's people and the adventure that, like, keeps me in it too. I mean, I race a lot, but I also just love the sense of adventure that comes with it. It's so fun.
yeah, yeah. It's true. Like some people get it, like you said, from the racing, and other people just get it from the pure adventure, pure journey of it, right? So that's where everyone's a little bit different.
Yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
yeah,
So coming into that planning piece then, so I know that like there's 6 people in your family. You're all incredibly ambitious, with all kinds of different goals and things on your horizons. How do you guys actually sit down and like figure out how you're gonna juggle all of this? Because like, I mean, what do you only have one that has the driver's license? So
Yeah.
And that was very relatively new in the last year or 2, right? So, like, you're driving kids places, you're both like, you and Nicole are both running businesses, like, all this stuff is happening. How do you, like, set yourself up so that everybody gets to achieve their goals and nobody gets left behind?
Mm. Yeah. I guess like it's boy, where do I start with that? It's it is hard for sure. One of the things we did with our kids, excuse me, just because they all love sport so much, is that and especially with youth sport, for those listening who have kids in sport, boy, like it's become so specific or so I don't know if you want to say centralized or what the term is I'm looking, but there's a real every sport is trying to funnel kids into that one sport and make it into a year-round sport.
Right,
And everyone's trying to create an elite athlete, and you better do this sport or you're falling behind. And our kids were a little bit different in a sense that they liked everything. We've had kids do taekwondo and, of course, now cross country skiing. We downhill ski as a family. We've got a football player. We've got baseball. We've done hockey. But one of the things with our kids we were forced to do because we were running so wild for a bit was each kid is allowed one competitive sport. So they're
mhm,
allowed one sport. Um, that doesn't mean that's the only sport they play, but only one competitive sport. And then we will allow other things at the recreation level.
okay.
Right, and so, like, my 2 oldest boys right now, they're essentially playing beer league hockey without the beer. They just they get an ice time once a week,
Mhm,
and, them and their buddies go out, and they play for whatever it is, hour 15 at different rinks throughout the city here, and that's their hockey.
mhm,
Because otherwise, the winter is about to, especially my daughter, she cross country skis a lot, and it's her time. And in the
mhm,
summer, 2 of our boys play baseball, and that is what they do. And
right,
so for them, that's where we try to manage the family dynamics a little bit that way. And so that's how we, because otherwise, I mean, there will be people out there who are listening that, I mean, they're never home because they just run kids everywhere, and it gets to be a little bit of stressful. And is it worth it? That's one question you have to ask yourself. So there we manage our kids a little bit, although they keep us busy as heck regardless,
yeah,
right? And so there's that. And then from a planning perspective, I have to be planned nearly a year in advance in regards to what races I'm going to do.
mhm,
And so, or what adventures, like Grand Canyon, we planned that thing, I want to say it was a year in advance that we had the dates almost picked. And
mhm,
then it goes on the family calendar, and then it's non-negotiable. If Nicole gives me the thumbs up, it's on the calendar and it's done deal.
mhm,
And so we do plan that quite a ways ahead. Or when I was doing my more Ironman specific training, there are some really long days if you're going to bike for 5 to 6 hours and then run 30K. That's a
right,
whole day, but I have to have those planned probably, I would say, 6 months in advance. It goes in the family calendar that on this day, this is what I'm doing, and then that's my day.
right,
And I'm only given a few of those a year for sure, but we're just so well planned for the big events. We're we're
mhm,
we're planned close to a year in advance that I need to have a pretty good idea what I'm doing,
mhm,
right? So that's the global picture, like the big picture. Um, on a weekly, I'm extremely every night before I go to bed, I look at my next day. I have my next day planned. So I
mhm,
know what I'm doing. There are no surprises the next day. I need to do that because there's kids pickup, there's kids driving to sports, there's my work, there's Nicole's work. So there's a lot of factors there, but I review it every night before I go to bed so that I don't guess up, or sorry, I don't wake up thinking, what do I have to get done today? I already know what my plan is, my big plan. Um, I don't know. Have you ever read the book Atomic Habits?
yeah, mhm,
Book, so Nicole stole a little idea. Well, I guess it was her own idea, but a little bit got the idea from the book. I think they term it like habit stacking
mhm,
as an example. And so she came up with, and this might be one of those corny terms that are, but she came up with Sunday Sundays. So our kids do not like to sit down with us on a Sunday evening
mhm.
and talk about our weeks. And they each have their books and their calendars, and they got to write down everything they're doing. They hate it. They, like, don't wanna plan the week. They're like, "Ugh, this is so boring. What's the point?" So she included ice cream into the equation.
Nice.
And she's like, "Yeah, guess what? Here's ice cream with whipped cream and chocolate sauce, caramel sauce, M&Ms, whatever. Make your ice cream." And then we sit down as a family. And on Sunday nights, every Sunday night, we discuss our week. So they
Mhm.
know what's coming up, we know what's coming up, and then we're planned for the week. And that goes into our calendar. So it's one of those things where the kids they're responsible for their own calendar, and we each have our own individual calendars, but then we come together on a Sunday night and we talk about it, and then we have to figure things out and
Mhm.
about how to balance it. So there is a fair bit of planning that goes into it, but I think that's the only way we can make it happen.
Yeah. And, like, what ages did you start that with your kids? Like, how old were they when you started doing the Sunday evening planning?
I think our youngest is now 12. We probably started a couple years ago,
Okay.
and there has been moaning and groaning and complaining about it ever since. But then, Nicole came up with a great idea of, "Oh, well, one of your rewards is you can have an ice cream."
Yeah.
Like, we don't eat a ton of junk in our house like that. So they're like, "Sweet. Okay. All right." And then we've actually had the kids ask, "Is it time for Sundays yet?" We're like, "Well, son of a gun, sure. Let's do it. Let's get together as a family." And then they sit there and they get a munch on their ice cream. So it's probably been 2 years, and
Mhm.
it's made a difference.
Mhm.
And I think it's without them really acknowledging it, it's made a difference in their lives to know, like,
Mhm.
"Oh, right, I do have that Wednesday. Okay, I better write that down in my book." And then
Yeah.
they're responsible for it as well.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, and I think that's, like, one of the things that I'm seeing that's probably the most important out of all of that is I think, in terms of stress, I think when people when your kids are, like, running around, and I can't speak about this because I don't have kids myself, but I think when your kids are running around and there's all this stuff happening, what I see in a lot of my friends that do have kids is that part of the stress is not so much the driving people places and all the things, it's that, um, there's one person in charge of all of the calendars. Not all the time, but oftentimes it's mom who's like her whole responsibility is making sure that everybody is where they need to be at whatever time, and nobody else takes responsibility for that. So it seems like by sitting down and having these Sunday conversations that you're actually like putting responsibility for people's goals, people's have to do's, people's want to do's. You're putting that on them, even at a young age, which I think is really important, and taking that pressure off you and off of Nicole to be like the managers per se. And that takes a big amount of stress off of somebody, I think personally, because time management is such a it weighs heavy on people. And if that's one person's job or even two people, like the parent's job, that's pretty heavy for somebody that's also managing the complex schedule of an endurance athlete as well.
Mhm. Mhm. It 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 makes such a big difference, like, just as an example, if our son Wyatt has a volleyball practice from 5 to 6:30, well, that's a great opportunity for me to I'll take him to practice, so I can drop him off at practice at 5. That gives me an opportunity to run. I
Right.
can fit my run in then, and then pick him up and we can come home together
Mhm.
instead of running back and forth or being, or Nicole and I debating who's gonna take who. Well, actually, no, that works out great. I've got
Mhm.
whatever, a 15K run I can fit in during that time. Wonderful. I'll take him. I can get my run in at the same time. I don't have to drive back and forth twice. So things like that. It um, it it forces you to be more compact, I guess, with your time,
Mhm. Mhm.
right, or efficient, whatever you want to call it.
Yeah. Well, and
Yeah.
work together too is like because why like if you drove it doesn't make sense to like drive him to practice and then drive home and then waste 45 minutes to drive. You know what I mean? Like there's so you can actually be all pursuing your goals at the same time if you actually communicate and talk to each other and set that up together instead of everything like being such like isolated pieces.
Right. Yeah.
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 Also chuckling to myself because I'm like, wow, you have a 15K run and you can get all of that done in between like dropping him off and picking him up. I'm like, "Whew, I
Well,
wish
yeah,
we kind of
it's
close.
I get kind of teased by a lot of the other sport parents that were involved because uh, everywhere I go, I basically have a backpack, and in
Mhm.
that backpack is running gear.
Yep.
And so if we go to a weekend where there's a baseball game, I can watch the baseball game. get him his food, and then get a run in before the next game begins.
Yeah.
Sometimes, right? And so like they're always kind of teasing me and making fun of me. Is like, oh, there's your backpack again, and it just goes with me. I always have a cooler and a backpack, like a little
Yeah.
cooler and a backpack everywhere I go.
Yeah.
And so I got my food and I got my workout stuff with me wherever I am, right? And so it's
Yeah.
kind of a running joke.
Yeah, it's funny you say that because I've spent the last, I don't know, probably 2.5 weeks researching a new backpack. I still haven't found one because I need to, like, I bike pretty much everywhere. So I need to, like, go to the pool in the morning and then hang out for a little bit, do a little bit of work, business work, and then go to my job. And I'm not coming home in the middle because it doesn't make sense because there's only like maybe a 45, 50-minute window in between when I finish swimming and when I go to work. I don't wanna call it real work, it's whatever, anyways. And I can't find a backpack that's big enough to have my breakfast for after my swim, but also my lunch to eat at work, and potentially dinner depending on what my shift is, and keep my laptop dry from my swimming stuff, and you know what I mean?
Right.
Like, I gotta have an extra set of shoes in there. I'm like, "This is a thing. We need a
Yeah.
better backpack." Maybe I have a new business idea, I don't know.
There's your business idea. Create something that for the active individual,
Yeah, it's like the
right?
the working endurance athlete.
Yes. Yep. But it is. You got to be time efficient, right?
Totally.
Yes. Yeah.
So with like juggling all of these schedules of everybody in your family and fitting yourself in when fitting your training in around everything, how do you actually keep yourself just like grounded and not just spinning around in your head and being stressed and all these types of things?
Hmm. Well, like, how do I tell the short story? A number of years ago, I ran into a buddy. That's a loose term. I know the guy. Maybe he's not a buddy, but anyway, this gentleman stopped me at the pool, and he asked how Nicole and I were doing. And I was like, "Well, good. Why?" And it's a kind of a weird thing to ask. How's like, how's your
Yeah.
marriage? Now, that's weird to stop a guy at the swim lane. And and what he was getting at was, he was a former Ironman athlete, and there was a group of them. And to some degree, Ironman had a negative effect on their relationships.
Mhm.
And he said they actually, as a group, they had got together and went out for supper or something. We're talking about the old days when they were racing Ironman. They said it jokingly, but there was a touch of truth, like how it ruined some of their relationships. And he was being nice, and he was just saying, are you and Nicole okay? And I asked him, I was like, I get what you're looking for, but you don't know Nicole, do you? And he's like, nah, I've
Yeah.
never met her. I'm like, I'll tell you what, she sets some rules for me, which are great. Like there is a limit to how much I can train and when I can train, and she has no problem setting me straight, and I completely agree to it. Like
Mhm.
she's allowed, so she is one who can keep things, uh, keep me within the parameters. We have set parameters, and in a kind way, she keeps me within those parameters because, I'm one of those. I do like training enough that I would just do more and more and more and more.
Mhm.
And if it ever started to affect the family, Nicole would be like, "Guess what?" I think there might have been one time where she threatened to hide my bike on me, and I was like, "That's fair. That's fair. I'm probably doing too much, and it's okay. That's cool." And so, she, she's kind of my outside perspective when I'm
Mhm.
in the midst of where we set up family rules about how much time I can spend away from the family. And that's why, a few years ago, a typical wake up time was about 4 a.m., maybe
Mhm.
4:15, in order to get training in before I was able to go in the house and make breakfast for everyone,
Mhm.
right? And so that's my deal. Make breakfast. I better darn well have breakfast ready by the time everybody gets out of bed. So therefore,
Mhm.
very early wake up times. So that is one thing that, Nicole for sure has been kind of central in this whole thing. Super supportive, but also very fair boundaries from a family perspective that we've set up together, and then she has had to enforce at times, right?
Mhm.
So I appreciate that, from her. And another thing right now, I don't wake up that early. I wake up at 5. 5
Mhm.
a.m. is my every morning wake up. And the first 30 minutes of every day right now is my quiet time where I'm able to pray, I'm able to meditate, I'm able to read. The first 30 minutes of every day right now is that quiet time where nobody's talking to me. I don't have a phone. I don't have a computer. I have nothing. It's just me in the corner of our living room with one little dimly lit light on, and that's it. And that's the first 30 minutes. And that's been a game changer for me as well, to just start out the day like that rather than get up and rush, 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 rush. And so
Mhm.
it is, I guess, in the word I think you used was grounding. That's been, I mean, you've known me a while. I'm a little bit hyperactive. I'm a little bit go, go, go. I don't do very good at sitting still.
Mhm.
It's something I've struggled with my whole life, I would suggest. But that is something where I get up every morning and it's almost like a calming way to start the day. And um, at first, it was difficult because I don't like sitting still. And I actually got to the point now, like this morning, um, I looked forward to waking up to have that 30 minutes. It's like 30 minutes. I don't have to do anything. This is awesome. And so
Mhm.
that's one thing that I haven't done that all, but I would say in the last probably about a year now, I've been doing that.
Mhm.
And it's been awesome. Like I just, I'd encourage anyone else to do, like, start out the day slow. Don't start out in a panic,
Yeah, I'm
right?
with you
So
on that. I do the same thing. I luckily don't like, or I don't know if lucky is the right word, but I don't have 4 kids to juggle, so my my morning time is usually like 2 to 3 hours, which is like for me is what I need. And so I don't expect that anybody get that in, but like the fact that like um with this busy schedule that you have that you A, make that time and B, take that time. 30 minutes sometimes feels like so much, but in the grand scheme of things, starting your day that way, and I'm a huge advocate for that. And starting your day in a way that's slow instead of fast is so important because your nervous system is going to respond from the second you get up. So if you
mm,
start rushing, then your nervous system is going to be like that all day, and that is not helpful for your mental health. It's not helpful for your sport performance. Like it's just basically breaking your body down slowly from the inside out. And
right,
so a lot of your goals, whether that's in your work, in your family, in your sport, in your life, whatever, are going to fall apart if you don't take that time because you're just setting yourself up for failure from a body perspective, not even just from a time perspective. So um you don't need to do 2 to 3 hours like me. 30
that's
minutes, even
awesome though.
oh, and when I don't have it, it's just like I just feel so weird. Like I like 2 hours is kind of like my minimum. I need to just like I call it my stare at the wall time. Like I will sometimes literally just sit and stare at the wall and do absolutely nothing for 2 hours.
Right.
But it's what I need, so here we are.
Yeah. Hey, again, everyone's different, right?
Mhm.
But I
Yeah.
don't think many people take any time,
Yes, exactly, and that's the
any time at
point.
all. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
even 15 minutes, like, just sit, like, drink your cup of coffee, like, you're already drinking your coffee. It's just, like, that simple switch from instead of, like, guzzling it down as you're running out the door to go to work, like, sit down for 15 minutes. Like, I am a huge advocate for sleep as well, but, like, 15 minutes of sleep is not gonna change everything for you. So, take that time and just chill out because that is probably gonna be more beneficial than anything, in my
Right.
opinion. There's no research on this, but
Right. No, I agree. I mean, if you want to think of it that way, like 15 minutes, how many 15-minute segments do we, I guess, waste in a day?
Mhm.
And one of the things I'm pretty fortunate. Um, I suck at social media. I don't do good at posting things. I'm just not good at. I'm not good at keeping up with things on social media. And I can't remember. My wife was talking the other day about how the average amount of time that somebody spends on social media a day was shocking to me
Mhm.
because the funny part, sometimes people think, with my training that that's all I do is train. And I think like,
Mhm.
how do you have a family? And how do you like do you ignore your kids? And I'm like, no, I'm super involved. And Nicole and I still have date nights every Sunday night. Like that's
Mhm.
another thing we do these every Friday night is pizza and a movie night with the kids. And now, especially the two older kids, you know, then they usually go out with their friends after. But we
Mhm.
we we do we create these times together. We've done pizza since before the kids were born. Nicole and I
Nice.
were doing pizza and a movie on Friday nights, right? But there's this impression that people think, well, all you do is train, to the point where it's detrimental and it's bad for you. And I've had a lot of people kind of question me on it. And I think if people cut back 80% on that social media use, there's
Mhm.
your training time in a week right there.
Yeah.
Like it's so that's one thing where I spend very minimal time on social media. And when I do, I'm a bit of a nerd in a sense that I don't follow like the people that I would say follow on Instagram are typically some type of runners or run coaches or exercise physiologists. Those are the people I follow. And then um, the athletes that I'm
Mhm.
coaching. I like to see what they post, and some of it's like about, and part of it is getting to know the athlete a little bit more um, on via their social media. You can almost like in a roundabout way meet their family as an example. But I
Mhm.
don't follow celebrities, and I don't follow um, everybody in town to know what
Right.
everyone's up to. Um, it's just not it's just not a good use of my time. And not to sound mean, but I typically just don't care.
Yeah.
Right?
I
So
think that's
why
okay.
yeah, it's just one of those things that, I wanna again, going back to that line, like, do the things that excite you or, those things don't excite me.
Yeah.
Getting out and running, I'd be like, I could go on social media for 45 minutes, or I could run for 45 minutes, or do a quick 30-minute strength session or whatever,
Mhm.
right? So I'd much rather use that time there,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so
And I think that's a great point because I don't know exactly what the stats are at now. I think the last I had heard, I think the average person is on I don't know if this is specifically social media or if it's like non I think if they I remember right, it was like non-work related screen time. So not counting when you're sitting at your computer at work doing stuff. So in your free time, I guess. I think it was something like 4 hours a day is average. Like
yeah,
what? That's
yeah,
crazy to think. Like that's a lot of time
yeah,
just
it's
like wasted, really. I mean, some people are doing stuff like I mean on my phone I read a lot of articles and lately I'm hanging out with ChatGPT a lot. We talk about all kinds of stuff.
right, okay, yeah,
It's
yeah,
like
yeah.
doing whatever, but like so it's like more I would say like self-growth or whatever. So it's maybe the equivalent of like reading a book, but like even if your social media time in a day is an hour, like, that's a big chunk of time that you could be doing, like, this, like, 30-minute grounding practice and actually taking care of your mental health and your performance at the same time by like, calming your nervous system and things instead of doing things that are draining it.
Yeah. Yeah, I totally agree. It's just such a time suck.
Mhm,
And I've never yeah, like I said, I maybe I'm for maybe just that age demographic where I'm just a little bit older where like my dad still doesn't have he's never had a cell phone.
mhm,
He's like, when we bought him one as kid, we like he got a phone and he just never used it. He's like, I've survived this long without it.
mhm.
Why would I need one now? I'm kind of like,
Yeah,
well, Dad, the world has changed. He's gone without a cell phone his whole life. He survived,
yeah,
and I'm kind of like, I'm gone without social media, and not that I'm not off of it completely, like hundred
mhm,
percent, but I'm just not super active, and I can go um like I can go a couple weeks without ever like looking at it. Period. Right,
mhm.
and so it's just kind of one of those funny things that I just maybe I didn't grow up with it, I never got involved in it, and so it's not a part of my everyday being,
Yeah. Well,
right?
and
So
I think it comes down to, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I think that it connects to your values in a sense too, is like um you don't value using that. Like the things like you talked about earlier, like one of your family values is like moving your body. And like obviously family and connecting with your family is a huge thing because you spend a lot of time and effort making sure that that happens in your life. And, like these, like your business is really important to you. Like there's all these other things that are like so they fuel you already is that you don't need that extra thing in there, and that's just actually gonna take away. So I think sometimes people get stuck in that place of just, like, it's habit, and they're not connected to the things that are actually important to them. Like, you kinda might know them a little bit, but you're not really, like, thinking about and consciously connecting to them on a daily basis, where, like,
mhm,
you're sitting and having that time, say, in the morning to connect with those things. You've got Nicole holding you accountable. I'm pretty sure your kids would hold you accountable too if they saw that you were acting out of values or whatever that looks like. So you've got like supports in place and things to like help to keep you on the track. And so things like social media aren't gonna they're not gonna get you to where you want to go and you know that.
mhm. Yeah,
Yeah.
on that same topic, because I'm assuming that the people listening here are involved in some type of endurance, right? Like
Mhm.
some type of, and there's been um, at least a handful of the athletes I've been coaching who just kind of got off Strava as well. So
Interesting.
everyone who knows what Strava is, like
Yeah.
the Facebook kind of like for endurance athletes, and but then there's the whole comparative, and like
Mhm.
you go down that road where you're comparing your pace to everyone else's pace or where they are, and you're thinking, my goodness, why? And I think that then we miss out on some of the joy. Why can't you just do it for you,
Yeah.
right? Why does it have to be a comparative to what everybody else is doing? And sometimes I do encourage it for the parents who are out there. part of part of why I think one of the things that I like with my sport, it's for me.
Mhm.
Almost everything else I do is for everybody else.
Mhm.
And I know that it sounds awful. Like it sounds bad, I guess, but sometimes we need to be more selfish.
Yeah.
And you got to do something for yourself because it'll make you a better person, which can improve other aspects of your life,
Mhm.
right? And not to dive too deep into the science, but work productivity for people who are active and healthy is astronomically higher than people who aren't. So
Mhm.
by you being active, you're a better employee or
Mhm.
employer, whatever that might be, and you can be a better parent, and you can be right. So I think that sometimes we miss that where people, well, I don't have time, and I guess in a roundabout way, I feel like sometimes I've been criticized because I do like these things, and like, oh, people see it as, oh, you're taking away from your family. I'm like, no, I actually feel like I'm giving to my family
Mhm.
by staying active. And now, like I've run the Grizzly Ultra as a team with my oldest boy Luke. We did it a couple years ago, and then actually my daughter and my son. I want to say that was 3 years ago. They did it they did it as a team.
Was the year
So
I
those two,
broke my legs or whatever. I
right?
remember that, I
Yeah,
was there.
yeah, that's right. Yes, yes. So I did it solo, and then those two did it as a team.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is awesome. Like, and my daughter's brought up the idea of running a 50K with me next, like entering a race somewhere, and her and I can run a 50K together. And awesome. Like they're pursuing this, and it's so cool, and I love it. And I feel like I'm by me remaining active and doing these things and having goals of my own that aren't just living vicariously through my children, it's bettered them as well. And
Mhm.
so they see it, and that old line, kids will do what you do, not what you say,
Mhm.
right? So you can blah blah blah, and sometimes that's all they, I can try to have the heart to heart, and sometimes they're like, I think all they see is moving lips,
Yeah.
right? They're not listening to anything I'm saying, which okay, um, but I have to model that,
Mhm.
right? And so I can't tell them to, if this is your sport, you need to train, you need to do it today when you don't want to, um, if I'm not doing the same thing,
Mhm.
right? And so there, I don't know, I just kind of, I feel a little bit passionate about um, adults
Mhm.
remaining active, and not just like giving up because we're too old or whatever that might be. We're not,
Mhm.
and your kids will be better off because of it, right? If
Yeah.
that, I don't know if I articulated that okay, but
No, I that makes total sense. It's like that whole idea of that or the cliche about you can't pour from an empty cup, right? Like, and you even said that like right at the very beginning of this episode was like, you're a happier person when you're training. And
hmm
so if you're happy, then you're going to be showing up for your family in a way better way than you could ever if you were unhappy and depressed and miserable and thinking about all of the things that you wish you could be doing and not feeling like they're living up to your potential and all of that stuff. Like when you look at and I'll be there's lots of science on this podcast so it's all good, but like when you look at the science of this stuff, like your heart and well everywhere in your body has an electromagnetic field, but your heart has an electromagnetic field that's really quite expansive and extends about 6 feet outside of your body. So if somebody's standing within 6 feet of you, which oftentimes your family is, like, sitting at a dinner table or sitting in a car or whatever that looks like, they're literally feeling your energy and the things that are coming out of your heart space, which is essentially emotion and all that kind of stuff. So they can feel it. They know if you are lit up in your life or if you think that you're a failure or whatever you want to call it, they can feel that. And even if nobody's saying anything, everybody's being affected by that. So you're like literally from a physics perspective, like your waves of energy and your
Mm,
emotions create waves, and their waves are going to come together and interact and level out, which is why you end up being like the average of the people that you spend the most time with, is because
right.
your energetics are literally interacting in that way. So by you taking the time to do the things that make you happy, now you have happy waves, and that's gonna interact with their waves, and everybody's just gonna level up. It's literally science, so it's
Right.
really cool.
Right.
It's cool to see, and I think too, the other thing that I appreciate about that is, like, I think you had posted something, on your social media, which is hilarious because we just talked about how you're not on there
Yeah,
much.
yeah, I'm trying hard. I'm just terrible at it.
Nah, you're fine, you do just fine on there. But you posted something about how, you and Naomi went for an hour and a half run together a few weeks ago, and she asked, and I know that she does this often. So it's one of those things where if you were training and taking time away from your family, your kids would hate you for it. There'd be resentment there. There would not be like they wouldn't be inspired by what you're doing. They probably wouldn't value moving their bodies, which is a family thing that you guys have all agreed on. She asked you to go with her. So there's that piece of like, dad's cool enough to go on for a run for an hour and a half. But there's also the piece of like, dad's fit enough to actually go and do something with the kids. And those are the things that are like, those are the things that they're going to remember, not you sitting on the couch scrolling through social media or just driving them to practice and then whatever, you know what I mean? So, like, creating so much, and I can see from an outside perspective for people that don't understand or haven't experienced it, how they can see it being a takeaway like, taking away from the family, but, like, it puts so much more energy into it.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
that's been one of the, um like, with my daughter, she does competitively cross country ski, and she wants to train all summer, and she did, and for the most part, it's on her own, unfortunately. But I've become a little bit of her training partner, and it's kinda cool because as of right now, I can't keep up with her on skis, but if she roller skis and I can run with her and we get these times together, I think tomorrow we're gonna head back out together again.
Mhm,
And so we get all these times together, and it's kinda, I mean, there is no doubt in my mind that it has enhanced our relationship, where
mhm,
we get to where she's come and biked, Bow Valley Parkway. One
mhm.
day she was just like, "I don't know, I think I can bike 100K," I think when she was 14.
Yeah, I
And I
came
was
that day,
like,
it was 80, I think.
"Yeah, okay." And so then oh, yeah, we went up to Louise, right?
Mhm.
We biked out, yeah.
We did there was 2. There was one the trip that it snowed and we were supposed to do 100, and then there was the year that Naomi wanted to do 80K and we went just I think it was just past Castle Junction and back.
Right, okay, that's what that, yeah. And so we get to do these cool things together, right? And, anyway, it's just it has made a relationship better, and quite honestly, um, when we run, um fairly often, I'm a talky person, obviously, but we just have conversations while
Mhm,
we're running, and it could be in between intervals that she's doing or whatever it is, but we actually sit there and just chat,
mhm,
right? And it's great, because otherwise, if we're at home, there's always things grabbing your attention. There's always other people around, or there's somebody to, I don't know, text, or somebody wants to do something. Well, when we're not running, it's just us.
mhm.
And she's awesome because she never brings her phone with her.
Nice.
And we're just out there, just the two of us. And it's like, this is the way, like, it just feels right, like
Yeah.
this is the way it should be. And those are just great times.
Mhm,
And I'm just hoping that, um, that in 10 or 20 years, I'll still be doing this. And that is also part, you had asked earlier, this is a whole other, but we, both my wife and I, read the book Outlive by Peter Attia.
oh, I haven't read that one.
And it's just kind of the one thing that caught both of our attention was, if you talk to anyone in their 40s, like, what do you want to be doing when you're 70 or 75? And
Mhm,
everybody says, well, I want to be able to climb a mountain. I want to be able to play with my grandkids. I want to be able to do all these things. And his idea is, if you can barely do those things in your 40s, there
mhm.
is no chance of you doing that in your 70s.
Mhm.
It's not like you just flick a switch when you're 70 and all of a sudden you start training now for that
Mhm.
future. And that's part of the motivation right now is like Nicole, woof, she does not enjoy running. But for some reason, she loves rucking. So she just puts, I think, 40 pounds or whatever. I don't know whatever the weight is in her pack, and she just goes hiking right now.
Yeah.
And then she's joined other classes. Like yoga is another thing she enjoys that I really, really don't. And so she does those things, but the idea is like when we're 70, I'd like to think that I could go to the Swiss Alps and climb a mountain on my own,
Mhm.
right? And that's part of the motivation right now. And the thought is, who knows? Maybe I'll be doing that with my grandkids. Like how sweet would that be?
Mhm.
Right? So when we go back like at the earlier on, we're talking a little bit about the motivation. That's another area of motivation for me is like I actually want to be awesome when I'm 70. I want
Yeah.
to be doing this totally cool stuff that I basically want to be able to do whatever the heck I want to do.
Yeah.
Right?
I always think about, like, I wish I had a picture of this guy because I want it on my vision board, but when I went to, Xterra in Maui, um, I was back and forth. I don't know if you're back and forth on the bike, but I remember being back and forth on the run with this guy that was in the 75 to 79 category. So I was, whatever, 27, I think, or 28, and back and forth with this guy in his mid to late 70s, and he beat me, and I just remember crossing the finish line, and he came up and gave me this huge hug, and, like, he was like, "You killed it out there, whatever," and, like, we were way at the back, like, that was my first year of racing, I didn't know what the heck I was doing,
Right?
um, and, like, but he just, like, gave me this hug, and I just remember saying to him, like, "You shit," is what was my response to him, like, "You are, like, more th you're triple my age, basically, and you still beat me," and his response to me was, um, "A, I've been doing this longer. I've done this every year for the last 25 years," which when you think about it, he started when he was 50, which is nuts to think,
Right.
or like, in his 50s, and he said something to the effect of, "And I don't care anymore, it's amazing that I'm even doing it." And I just, like, that's always stuck with me too, of just,
Hmm.
like, the dropping of the expectation, I think, is kind of what he was trying to communicate to me, is, like, I was in my head, I just remember thinking, like, "Oh my god, this guy," because you can see their age category on their calf, and I'm thinking, like, "This guy is gonna beat me, and he's so old," and I was, like, in my head beating myself up, and I think he knew that. And he was like, "I don't have that expectation. I just beat a 20 whatever year old. Awesome. Like, that's cool." Like,
Yeah.
whereas I was like, "I'm at the back and this guy's beating me," and I was just, like, so negative. So it's just interesting to think about that as, like, it's 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 not about winning, and it's not about all of these things that we think it's about. It's really just about wanting to do these things for life instead of just
Hmm.
being a bum at that age, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. And it obviously it can be done.
Mhm.
And but I really do feel like that's where a little bit of you know what, I'll be honest, is when people come in as for whatever injury it might be that people come in to see me from a like orthopedic type of physiotherapy perspective, um, there's a bit of a running joke that every single person I see, I try to convince to run. And and it's true. I get just pretty much everyone in and I'll be like, "Oh, okay. Have you ever thought about running?" And partly when people are looking for time-wise, it's pretty efficient. You can literally run anywhere.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like no matter what holiday, you can be out camping or you could be at a hotel in Hinton, Alberta,
Yeah.
and you can still run, right? So there is that. But I just think, especially when you get to these people in their 30s and in their 40s, and just not letting everything slip away,
Mhm.
right? And and I feel a little bit passionate about that, like trying to convince people like start here. And as a coach, you know, I, I I only have so much time, so I get a lot of athlete requests right now, and I
Mhm.
I can't always accommodate because I would have too many athletes at times. And there was a gentleman who recently had contacted me a few times, and I just said no, and I said no, and I said no, and finally, on his last email, the way he put it was. um, I just feel shitty and I'm not happy about it. Can you please do something to help? And I thought,
Mm,
huh, well, that's pretty straightforward. um, well, why don't we sit down and have a chat? And he is
mhm,
not the typical athlete that you would picture coming in here who, wants a Boston qualifying time or wants to run their first 100K or whatever it might be. He's like, you know what? I want to feel less bad and I want to be able to live to see my kids grow up.
yeah.
And I thought, huh, you're kind of the guy who's motivating to me right now. Like, yes, you
Mhm,
know what? We will do this. And so we've been working together and again, it could be one of these, 1 minute run, 3 minute walk type of things to
mhm,
start out with. But it's pretty cool where to take someone like that and they want to change their life and when they are 60, they're capable of doing things and being right now in his late 30s and not capable of doing a whole bunch.
mhm,
And that's where partly again like I do feel I don't know, maybe it's my age, maybe it's my friends around me. I don't know what it is, but just recently I felt um a lot more oomph towards that kind of demographic of like, hey, let's do something now so
mhm,
that your end years aren't just like, just trying to stay alive, but
mhm.
rather like living those years, right?
Yeah.
And
Le
so
and I think that's such an interesting perspective too, because like I don't, yeah, maybe for you it's age. I don't know what it is for me, but I feel similar. I think there's this misconception for people that work with like athletes, and I use that term very loosely, that like a coach or somebody that like me that works with athletes. I don't know what else to call these people, but that you have to be like this person that's like elite, or that they're going to be fast, they're going to have a BQ, or they're going to finish on the podium in their age group or whatever that looks like. But like I don't care, no, and I don't think I mean there's some people that really just only want to work with the best of the best, and that's fine, but I think a lot of people out there are really looking for people that just want to live. And like that's what motivates me to work with the people I work with, is that like people are not feeling like themselves. They're feeling like this crappy version, and they know what they could be, and something in them is like lit, right? Like there's a little tiny spark there. And like that's part of the reason my business name is Ignite, because it's like the little spark is there and I want to just like can like poke the spark until it turns into a fire, you know what I mean? So
right.
it's like
Yeah.
it's not about I still don't think, and we've talked about this lots, but I don't think endurance sport is about having all these showy, flashy things. It's about like getting your own fire inside you lit, and whatever that looks like, whether it's racing or adventures or both, or
Hmm.
just being able to spend time with your family and your kids in your best state. It's all part of it.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Um I mean, you hear people say this all the time, like it's changed my life.
Hmm.
But endurance sport has literally changed my life. Like it's
Hmm.
just upended everything from I'm going to tell a quick funny story. I got to
Okay.
tell you a funny story because a little while ago, my daughter was flipping through old photos, and there was an old photo where there is this shirtless man with his arm around Nicole, and
Mhm.
my daughter had said, "Dad, like, why do you have that picture? Like, what are you okay with that picture?" And I said, "Yeah, why?" And she's like, "Well, there's that man with his arm around mom." And I'm like, that man is me. And it
Mhm.
was back when I was just lifting weights all the time.
Mhm.
And I was like quite bulky and quite and she asked the question like, why, what happened to you? What happened to all your muscles? And I said, you know what? The best thing, endurance. I discovered the bicycle. I started to run, I think when I think I started running when I was 30 or 29. I biked for a few years first. But but, uh, but it was kind of a funny just she was kinda like, "Oh, that's you, like, you were so big and now you're, like, so much leaner, but I'm doing the things that I love,"
Mhm.
right? And I think, to be honest, I think it's healthier
Mhm.
as well than just going and, like, pumping iron all the time, right? And so, so anyway, it's just kind of a funny thing where it took me back to a little bit where I was because um, I went from being like um, overweight to then just like bulking up to now this endurance type of life that it's just kind of funny how the body adapts to the stresses that we place upon it. And now I got this like I look nothing like I did 25 years ago
Mhm,
even,
mhm,
right? But it's just kind of neat, but I'm doing the things I like and that make me happy. And the other part of it is the people I have made. We brought up Fraser. I
mhm,
never would have met Fraser.
mhm,
Blaze is another good friend of mine, another athlete. Trish is another good athlete. Like you know Trish quite well as
mhm,
well. And these people where I never would have met these people who have made my life better.
mhm,
I never would have met them if not for this,
mhm.
right? And I'm just so thankful for all of it, right?
Yeah,
So sorry, I
yeah.
kind of went off on a tangent.
Oh,
I don't even know if that story applied to anything, but
I think it did. I think it does. Like, it's showing, like, endurance sport I think it's really inspiring. Endurance sport has the power to change people's lives, and people aren't just saying this because everybody else is saying it. It's changed my life, it's changed your life, it's changed probably all of the people we've talked about, and probably most of the people listening to this in some capacity. And I just think that that's one of the things to just hold on to in the times when things get really busy, in the times that training feels like a slog, in the times that you're injured, whatever it is, it's like remember why you came to this sport and why you've stuck with this sport. Because there's also a lot of people out there that like they sign up, they do one I don't know, they do a 50K just to say they did it, or they run a marathon just to prove something to themselves and then they never run again. But it's like the people that are sticking this out, like there's something is life changing for you there. And remembering that glimmer in the moments when things are not super great, because those times happen too, probably almost more often than not.
right.
And yeah, keeping that rolling you forward and your support systems and all of that kind of stuff. It's just super important.
Yeah.
So, I mean, wow, lots of really awesome stuff today. I think hopefully everybody is just loving this because it's been a great conversation. Is there anything, I guess, like a word of wisdom or a thought or anything that you want to leave the listeners with today in terms of living endurance sport life, spending time with family, whatever that is, something you want to leave people with?
Yeah, I guess the one thing when I got into one thing that I've kind of started to realize is that when people think of endurance sport, they always think that longer is better,
Mm,
right? And that you always have to if you do 10K, you have to do a half. If you do a half, you got to do a full. If you do a full, then you got to get into the ultra. And if you do a 50K, you got to do 50 miler, and on and on and on. And I don't necessarily like that's where sometimes we get external pressures placed upon us.
mhm,
And that's one thing I want to warn about is endurance sport doesn't mean longest is best. Different
mhm,
things for different people. It goes back to the idea do what excites us, right? And if running a 50 miler is just too stressful and it's too time consuming and it's too you don't have to do it. Like
mhm,
and that's one thing I've had to battle with some of my athletes that I'm coaching is there's no need for you to do that. If you just feel obligated to do it, don't feel obligated to do anything.
mhm,
Do what excites you, and if that is a half marathon, wonderful, then that's what you can go for, right? But that is one thing where then we're giving into the external pressures, but you need to do something that fits your life and what excites you,
mhm,
right? And so that's what I think. But the other one that I would encourage for those of you listening is get in touch with a run group of
mhm.
some sort. I hardly run with anybody,
Yeah.
right? But I do the odd things. I have a thing that we call Tuesdays with Fraser. I meet two. We
Fraser's
both.
like the head of this
Yeah,
podcast
yeah.
today.
So I'm going to make him
Shout out
listen to this
Fraser.
thing. Yeah, but you know what? One of the highlights of my week every Tuesday afternoon, he blows off work. I blow off work. We go for a run. We have a beer and we play cribbage. As goofy as that sounds,
I love it.
that is our Tuesday afternoons, right? And then our kids get home from school and we go our separate ways. But that is something that I look for every Tuesday,
Mhm,
right? And so, but what happens is not that you have to run with somebody all the time, but we have local groups in Red Deer where I don't know if you're going to meet better people, just salt of
mhm,
the earth people, and you don't have to do every run with them, but they're awesome. And then you get nobody's negative there.
Mhm.
Like nobody. And it's just, it's always good. And it's good to plug in a little bit and get to know people. And even through my coaching, one of the side benefits that was not at all an initial thought were the friendships and the relationships that have been made amongst my athletes who have met at, say, just a get together or a group run or something like that. And then they're out going and meeting up and doing their own things, or going to the mountains together, or they're meeting together on a Saturday morning. And it's like life is relationships.
Mhm.
And my wife is the one who said it. She's like, runners are just happier people. I'm like, darn right they are. It's so I think get plugged in a little bit. Not that you have to be married to that group and do everything with that group, but if you meet them once a month, or
Mhm.
if you meet them once a week, or whatever it is, I would encourage you to also get involved, because there will be times throughout a year that you struggle, and it's almost like having an accountability partner,
Mhm.
right? And I've had it even where, I mean, there's a Thursday night group in town called Run Collective that, there was a time I didn't show up for probably like 4 months, and they're like, "When are you coming out to group again?" And that's all it needed to be like, you know what? I will be there on Thursday,
Mhm.
right? And so I don't know. It's just such a good. It's just get plugged in a little bit, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's important too. It can be, and I'm guilty of this, but like it can be really easy to get stuck in your training routine, but those the connections are probably really what makes it what it is, what endurance sport is. It's not the swimming, the biking, the running, it's the people you meet and the adventures that you get to go on together. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, I totally agree. So that's the a side benefit of, there's the health benefits, there's the mental benefits, but then there is, I don't know if you want to call it emotional benefits or whatever, but being a part of a group is powerful too.
Mhm. Yeah,
Yeah,
and a group of pretty darn cool people is even
that's
better.
exactly. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, this has been a great conversation, Craig. Thanks so much for taking the time today out of a busy schedule, but yeah, really appreciate you being here. And yeah, we'll chat again soon.
Okay, thanks for having me. I appreciate it.
Yeah.
Okay, thanks, Jen.
Thanks for tuning in to the Athlete Mental Health Podcast. I hope that today's episode has got you thinking and has inspired you to take action towards improving your mental health. If you're looking for more tools and insights on boosting mental health and sport performance, join me in my Instagram community at Ignite Health Coaching. Be sure to drop me a DM to say hi and let me know what your biggest takeaways have been so far. Don't forget to follow and subscribe to the podcast so you'll get notified every time I drop a new episode. Sending you all the strength and energy that you need to crush your training, racing, and life.